Rion had been traveling for weeks through empty space. His small ship, old and scratched, carried him farther than he had ever gone before. Supplies were running low, and the engines needed rest. When his navigation screen showed a station drifting near the border of known space, he decided to dock. The station looked half broken from the outside, but it was alive with traffic. Ships of many kinds came and went, flashing lights across the dark. Rion stepped out onto the docking bay. Stretching his tired arms, the air smelled different, mixed with oil, dust, and strange spices. Crowds of aliens moved around him, some tall, some short, some covered in scales or fur. He had seen aliens before, but never so many in one place. His stomach growled, and his throat was dry. All he wanted was food and a drink. Following the crowd, he found himself walking past rows of shops and stalls. The lights glowed in colors he had never seen on Earth, and voices in dozens of languages echoed off the metal walls. Then he noticed a door with a glowing sign above it. The sign was written in shifting letters, changing form for every eye that looked at it. For Rion, the words appeared in English dotted red, the edged bar. He stepped inside. The bar was crowded, but not noisy. Instead of music, there was a steady hum of conversation. Strange lamps hung low, casting soft light on round tables made of polished metal. Beings from across the stars sat together, drinking, laughing, or watching quietly. At the far end of the room stood the counter, and behind it moved the barmaid. She was unlike any alien Rion had seen before. Her skin was a rich teal color, her hair dark and flowing over her shoulders. She had no strange horns or heavy armor like others in the room. Instead, she looked calm, graceful, and sure of herself. She carried glasses with smooth motions, as if she had been working there for years. When she turned her head, her eyes caught the light, and for a moment Rion forgot he was in a place filled with danger. He walked to the counter and sat on one of the stools. The seat creaked under his weight. The barmaid approached, her steps light, and looked at him with a small smile. "You are human," she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried across the counter. Rion nodded. "First time here. I just need a drink." She tilted her head, studying him as though he were something rare. Then she reached under the counter and brought out a glass. The liquid inside glowed faintly, shifting between blue and silver, almost alive. She set it before him without a word. Rion stared at the glass. He had seen many drinks in space, some thick, some bubbling, some steaming cold, but never one that seemed to shine on its own. He frowned and asked, "What isn't it?" The barmaid laughed lightly, as if his question was amusing. She leaned closer, her eyes bright. "Drink first, ask later." Rion hesitated. "I like to know what I'm drinking." Her smile widened, and she lifted the edge of the glass with one finger, pushing it a little closer to him. "If I told you, it would not be as fun." At the nearby tables, several aliens had turned their heads. Their eyes glimmered with interest, and some whispered to each other in low voices. Rion noticed them and felt uneasy. It was as if everyone was waiting for something to happen. He pushed the glass back slightly. "It looks dangerous." The barmaid leaned her elbow on the counter, resting her chin on her hand. She was still smiling. "Dangerous, perhaps, or perhaps it is the best thing you will ever taste. That depends on you." Rion looked around again. The aliens were watching more openly now, their expressions ranging from amusement to disbelief. Some were even shaking their heads, as if they already knew the outcome. "What's so funny?" Rion asked, raising his voice just enough for them to hear. No one answered. Only the barmaid's laugh broke the silence, light and quick. As though she knew a secret no one else would tell him, she picked up another glass, filled it with a clear liquid, and slid it down the counter to a scaled customer at the far end. But her eyes never left Rion. Rion tapped his fingers on the counter. His throat was still dry, and the glowing liquid did not look any worse than what he had seen on rough planets. But something in the way everyone watched made his heart beat faster. "You are all waiting for me to drink it," he said slowly. The barmaid did not deny it. She only smiled again, a quiet laugh in her throat. Then she added, "Humans always ask questions. Few dare to taste." Rian sat back, unsure if she was teasing him or warning him. His hand rested on the counter near the glass. The liquid swirled inside, the blue shifting into silver, the silver into blue again, as though the drink was alive. He thought of his long journey, the broken stations he had passed, the empty nights staring at the stars. Maybe this was why he had come here. Maybe he was meant to test himself against something strange. The barmaid's voice cut into his thoughts, soft but sharp. If you fear the glass, you can walk away. Many do. That last sentence stung him. Fear was not something he wanted tied to his name. Not here, not in front of dozens of eyes. He was human. Humans did not run from a challenge, even when they did not understand it. Rian wrapped his fingers around the glass. The surface was colder than he expected, almost icy. He lifted it slowly, holding it near his lips. The whispers in the room grew louder, until he could hear nothing else. The barmaid's lips curled into a small smile, and her eyes gleamed. Rian took a breath and asked once more, his voice steady. "What is in the glass?" The barmaid laughed again, but this time the sound was deeper, carrying a hint of mystery. She leaned forward just a little, her lips close enough for only him to hear. Her answer was simple. "You will see," and she watched as he raised the glass. The glass felt heavy in Rian's hand, heavier than it should have been. He stared into the glowing liquid, the shifting blue and silver swirling as though it carried a life of its own. Round him, the entire bar seemed to hold its breath. Aliens leaned closer, eyes wide, waiting for the human to make his choice. The barmaid, Selin, stood calmly behind the counter. Her teal skin caught the soft light, her eyes steady on Rian. She said nothing more. Only her faint smile urged him forward. Rian lifted the glass to his lips and took a cautious sip. The liquid burned the instant it touched his tongue. It was like fire spreading through his mouth, down his throat, and into his chest. His first instinct was to spit it out, but he forced himself to swallow. A rush of heat spread through his veins, making his fingers tingle and his head spin. His vision blurred, then sharpened. He could hear voices from across the room, even whispers too soft for normal ears. He set the glass down with a sharp clink, gripping the counter to steady himself. His heart pounded, his breath quick and shallow. Gasps filled the bar. A tall alien with 4 arms muttered in disbelief. Another, with dark scales along its jaw, shook its head, one by one. Voices rose, questioning what they had just seen. Selin leaned closer, her smile growing. Still awake, interesting. Rian wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. What was that? Her eyes gleamed, a brew of starfruit grown near black holes, mixed with storms caught from dying suns. It carries more energy than most living bodies can endure. Most species collapse after one sip. Many never wake again. Rian's eyes widened. He looked around the room. Dozens of alien eyes watched him closely, some with curiosity, others with unease. He realized now why everyone had laughed earlier. They had expected him to fall. Yet here he was, standing tall. His head buzzed with strange clarity. The hum of the bar's lights grew sharp in his ears, and he could almost feel the vibrations of footsteps across the floor. His senses were alive in a way they had never been before. It was terrifying, but also thrilling. Humans are not supposed to drink this, Selin said softly, though her voice carried clearly. But you endure. Her words sent a ripple through the crowd. The scaled alien muttered, "Impossible. Humans are fragile. They break easily." Rian turned toward the voice, his vision sharp enough to catch every movement. He felt stronger than before, though his legs trembled slightly under the weight of the energy inside him. "Fragile?" he said, his voice calm but steady. "Does this look fragile to you?" The alien glared but said nothing more. Selin's laugh broke the silence. It was not cruel, but filled with delight. "You may be the first of your kind to survive the glass." Rian frowned. "Why give it to me, then? If it's so dangerous, why risk it?" She leaned on the counter, her eyes never leaving his. "Because sometimes danger reveals truth, and sometimes truth needs courage to be seen." The words puzzled him. But before he could ask further, a short, fur-covered alien stood from its chair. Its round eyes glowed faintly in the dim light. If a human can drink the Black Star brew and live, then perhaps the stories are true. Others murmured agreement or shook their heads. Rian caught bits of their whispers. Words like impossible, dangerous, hopeful floated around him. The atmosphere in the bar had shifted. Rian pressed his palms against the counter, trying to steady himself as the drink's power surged through him. His body was hot and cold at once, his mind sharper. Then a blade yet heavy with pressure. He met Selen's gaze again. You wanted me to prove something. Her smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet seriousness, perhaps. Or perhaps I wanted to see if humans are truly different from the rest. And he asked. She tilted her head. You endure. That is more than most. The crowd around them had not returned to their conversations. Instead, they were focused on Rian. Some with narrowed eyes, others with cautious interest. It was as though, in one simple act, he had stepped across an invisible line he did not even know existed. Rian picked up the glass again, feeling the cold surface against his fingers. There was still more of the glowing liquid left. Part of him wanted to finish it, to show them that humans were not weak, that he could stand where others had fallen. But his body warned him with every beat of his heart. One sip had nearly knocked him down. Another might do worse. Selen seemed to sense his thoughts. She shook her head gently. Do not push your luck, human. Surviving one sip is more than enough. More would break even you. Reluctantly, Rian set the glass down. The whispers around him quieted, though the weight of the room's eyes did not lift. Why did they care so much? Rian asked. Selen folded her arms across her chest. Because this bar is more than a place to drink. It is where news spreads, where secrets travel faster than ships. By tomorrow, the story of a human surviving the brew will be told in every corner of this station. By next week, it may reach across systems. Rian frowned. And what will that mean? Her lips curved again into a small smile, though her eyes were sharp. It means some will see you as a curiosity, some will see you as a threat, and some may see you as hope. Rian shook his head, rubbing his temple as the energy inside him buzzed like lightning. All I wanted was a drink. Selen's laugh returned, soft but ringing with amusement. And now you have much more. The murmur of the crowd began to fade as patrons slowly returned to their tables. Still, many glanced his way, whispering among themselves. Rian knew his life had just changed, though he did not yet understand how. Selen leaned closer once more, lowering her voice so only he could hear. Remember this, human. The glass does not lie. It reveals strength where none is expected. Do not waste what it has shown you. Rian met her gaze, steady despite the storm inside him. I didn't come here to be a hero. Heroes never do, she replied. The room settled back into low conversation, but the atmosphere remained tense, charged. Rian sat at the counter, the untouched remainder of the glowing drink still before him, while Selen moved to serve another patron. Yet every so often, her eyes returned to him, as if she was watching not just the man but the path his choice had opened. Rian did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing for certain: nothing in his life would ever be simple again. Rian stayed seated at the counter long after most of the whispers faded. The glass with the glowing drink still sat in front of him, untouched after his first sip. His body still carried the strange energy, making his senses sharper than before. He could hear footsteps on the far side of the room, the rustle of alien wings, even the faint hum of the bar's power lines hidden in the walls. It was overwhelming, but also strangely clear. Selen moved gracefully along the counter, serving drinks to others. She spoke to them in different tongues, changing her words like water flowing into different shapes, yet her eyes often flicked back to Rian, watching him carefully. When the rush slowed and the other customers returned to their own talks, she walked back to where he sat. You are holding together better than I expected, she said softly. Rian gave a faint smile. I've been through worse, long nights. And deep space make you tougher than you think. Her expression shifted, curious, perhaps. But the brew you tasted was not meant for common travelers. It is given to those who lead, those who fight, those who must prove themselves in front of many eyes. Few outsiders are even offered it. Rian frowned. Then why give it to me? For a moment, Selen was quiet. She leaned on the counter, her face close but her voice low, meant only for him. Because I needed to know if humans are truly different. Stories reached the station. Stories about your people. Some say you are too fragile to matter in the greater galaxy. Others whisper you are more dangerous than you appear. I wanted to see for myself. Her words settled heavily on him. And what do you think now? Her lips curved into a small smile, but her eyes were serious. I think humans endure in ways others cannot. You are not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, but you refuse to fall, even when you should. That is rare, Rian chuckled softly, though his chest felt heavy with the weight of her words. Back home we call it stubbornness. Stubbornness can save worlds, she replied. Before he could answer, a loud voice broke across the room. A tall alien with gray skin and ridges along its arms stood from a table. Its sharp eyes locked on Rian. Enough talk. The human drank the brew, yes. But one sip proves nothing. Let him face a real test. The bar went silent again. All eyes turned to Rian once more. He sighed, muttering under his breath, I was just looking for a quiet drink. Selen straightened, her face calm but her tone warning. Careful. Human. They will push you if you let them. This bar is not only a place of drinks. It is also a stage where power is shown. Rian turned his head toward her. A stage. She nodded. This place belongs to no single world or empire. It is neutral ground. But every action here travels far, through whispers and traitors. A show of strength here can echo across systems. Rian felt his stomach tighten. He had walked into a bar, but somehow it felt like he had stepped into the center of something larger. The gray-skinned alien stepped closer, its voice booming. If the human is as strong as you say, barmaid, then let him prove it. Selen's gaze sharpened. And if he does, the alien's mouth curved in a grin. Then perhaps humans deserve a place in this galaxy after all. Rian glanced between them, feeling like a piece in a game he didn't understand. He leaned closer to Selen and whispered, You're enjoying this, aren't you? Her soft laugh returned. A little, still. She leaned close enough that only he could hear. Be careful. They test you not because they believe in you, but because they want to see you fail. Rian's jaw tightened. Then I can't give them what they want. Selen's expression softened. A hint of approval in her eyes. The gray-skinned alien returned to its seat, but the challenge hung heavy in the air. Rian knew it was not over. He sat back on his stool, trying to calm his racing mind. He wanted answers, and Selen seemed to hold them. Tell me the truth, he said quietly. What? Is this place really? Why are all these aliens so interested in me drinking one strange glass? Selen glanced around before answering, making sure no one listened too closely. Then she lowered her voice. This bar is a gathering place for those who walk between the shadows of empires, traitors, mercenaries, scouts, smugglers, and sometimes spies. They bring news, secrets, and warnings. It is here that stories grow wings. It is here that hope or fear begins. Her words made Rian's skin prickle. And you run all of this? She shook her head gently. I guide it, but I am not only a barmaid. I once served as a scout during the last Great War. Before I chose this path, I saw what happens when powers fall and new ones rise. I built this place as a way to listen, to see what moves in the dark. Rian stared at her, trying to picture her in armor, fighting in some distant battle. Her calm and graceful presence made it hard to imagine. Yet the steady look in her eyes told him she spoke truth. So why me? He asked again. Selen's gaze did not waver, because whispers say the Droll are stirring again. The name meant nothing to Rian. The Droll, her lips pressed into a thin line. They are a warlike people. Long ago, they swept through systems, leaving nothing but ruins. The last time they rose, it took alliances of many races to drive them back. But alliances are weak now, divided, afraid. Few believe they can be stopped if they return. Rian felt the energy from the drink still buzzing in his blood, making his thoughts race. And you think humans are the answer? Her smile returned, small but sharp. Perhaps. Your kind is new to the stars. yet you endure where others would break. You face danger with stubborn courage. That is why I gave you the glass. I wanted to see if the stories are true." Rian sat in silence, letting her words sink in. He had left Earth chasing adventure, but he had not expected to be dragged into whispers of war. Finally, he shook his head with a tired laugh. "I only came here for a drink. Now you're telling me the future of the galaxy rests on humanity?" Selen's eyes softened, and for the first time, her voice carried something like hope. Not the future of the galaxy, but perhaps a spark, and sometimes a spark is all it takes. Rian leaned back, exhaling slowly. The glowing glass still sat before him, untouched since his first sip. He realized it was no longer just a drink. It had become a symbol, one that others in the bar would remember. Selen stepped away to serve another customer, but before she left, she placed a hand lightly on the counter near him. "Be ready, human. Tonight was only the beginning." As she moved down the counter, Rian looked around the bar. Aliens had returned to their conversations, but their eyes still lingered on him from time to time. He was no longer invisible here. He had been marked by the glass, by Selen's test, and by the whispers that would soon spread beyond these walls. Rian rubbed his forehead. Feeling both heavy and sharp at once, he had wanted rest. But it seemed rest would not find him here. The secret was out. He had survived the glass, and now the galaxy would know. The whispers in the bar did not fade quickly, even as Selen moved among the tables. Serving drinks and speaking in low voices, the air stayed heavy. Rian could feel the weight of eyes on him. Every time he turned his head, some alien would glance. Away too late, caught in the act of staring. The glass of glowing brew still sat in front of him, but he no longer needed to touch it. The fact that he had survived it was enough to keep everyone's attention fixed on him. At one table near the wall sat a group of mercenaries. They wore rough armor patched with different metals, their belts heavy with tools and weapons. They had been watching him since the moment he entered, their eyes narrow and sharp. Now one of them, a tall creature with horns curving back along its skull, stood and stepped forward. The noise of the bar dipped low. The horned mercenary's voice carried easily. "So the human drinks the Black Star brew and stays standing. But that proves little. Anyone can get lucky once." Rian turned on the stool, his jaw tight. "You think it was luck?" The mercenary's lips curled back in something like a grin. "I think you survived one sip, and now everyone whispers as if you were something greater. A real test should follow. Otherwise, this barmaid's stories are nothing but games." Selen returned to the counter, her teal eyes sharp. She placed her hands lightly on the wood surface and spoke in a calm but cutting tone. "Be careful with your words. This bar is neutral ground." The mercenary did not back down. He looked from Selen to Rian, his voice rising. "Then let the human prove himself. Not with a sip, not with whispers, but with endurance." Murmurs spread through the bar again. Some aliens leaned forward eagerly. As though they had been waiting for this, others shook their heads, muttering that it was foolish. Rian sighed quietly. He had hoped the night would end with nothing more than a strange story to remember. But he could see it in the mercenary's eyes. If he refused, the whispers would turn into jeers, and he would be marked as weak. Selen had warned him. This place was a stage. To walk away now would close every door before it even opened. He met Selen's gaze. Her look was calm but serious, as if she was giving him one last chance to choose. Rian stood. "Fine. What kind of test?" The horned mercenary's grin widened. "The chamber. If you last inside, no one will doubt you." Selen's expression darkened. "That is dangerous." "Dangerous is the point," the mercenary replied. Rian frowned. "What's in this chamber?" Selen's voice lowered. "It is a training room built long ago, used by mercenaries to test their limits. The gravity shifts without warning, sometimes pressing like a mountain, sometimes dropping away until you can barely keep your balance. Temperatures swing from freezing cold to burning heat. Few last more than minutes. Many never try twice." Rian's mouth went dry, but he forced himself to stand straight. He looked at the mercenary. "How long?" "As long as you can," the mercenary said. "No tricks, just endurance." The bar went silent again. Selin stepped closer, her voice low so only he could hear. You don't have to do this. You already proved more than enough. Rian gave a small, tired smile. Maybe. But if I walk away now, they'll say humans only drink and talk. I need them to know we don't quit. Selin studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. Her expression softened, though her eyes held a flicker of worry. The mercenary gestured, and the crowd began to move, leaving the bar in a stream of voices. Rian followed, Selin at his side. They walked down a wide corridor that opened into a large circular room lined with metal walls. Lights glowed along the edges, casting the floor in a pale shine. This is the chamber, the mercenary said. Step inside when you are ready. Rian took a breath, steadying himself. His body still buzzed faintly from the drink earlier, though now it felt more like fuel than fire. He stepped into the center of the chamber. The metal floor was cold. Under his boots, the mercenary pressed a panel near the door. The hum of machinery filled the room. Suddenly, Rian felt his knees bend under crushing weight. Gravity slammed down, forcing him to the floor. He grit his teeth and pushed against it, his muscles burning. Slowly, with effort, he straightened. His breath came hard, but he refused to fall. The mercenary smirked. Good. But let us see more. Another press of the panel. The weight vanished. Rian gasped as his body lifted, almost floating. His feet struggled for grip as the floor seemed to slide away from him. He bent his knees, lowering his center, and forced himself to stand steady. The temperature dropped suddenly. Frost spread across the floor, his breath turning into clouds before his face. Cold bit into his skin, his hands trembling, but he clenched his fists and endured. Moments later, heat rushed in, waves of fire like air striking him until sweat rolled down his forehead. The shifts came faster, crushing gravity, weightless drift, freezing winds, burning heat again and again. His body screamed with exhaustion. His mind begged him to give in. But he remembered Selin's words, humans endure. He planted his feet, bent his knees, and refused to fall. Outside the chamber, aliens watched silently. Even the mercenary who had challenged him leaned forward, surprise flickering in his eyes. Selin stood apart, her hands clasped, her gaze never leaving Rian. Time lost meaning inside the chamber. Every second stretched into a battle. Rian's muscles ached, his lungs burned. Yet he forced himself to keep standing. One more breath, one more step, one more moment. Finally, the chamber powered down, the weight lifted, the air settled, and the temperature returned to normal. Rian stood trembling in the center, drenched in sweat, his chest heaving, but still on his feet. The door opened. Silence filled the hall. Then, slowly, one by one, aliens began to nod. Some murmured in respect. Others looked away, unwilling to admit their surprise. But the message was clear. The human had endured. The mercenary who had challenged him stepped forward. His grin was gone, replaced with a serious look. You lasted longer than most. Perhaps there's truth in what the barmaid says. Rian stumbled slightly as he stepped out of the chamber. Selin moved quickly to his side, steadying him with a hand on his arm. Her voice was soft but proud. You did not need to do this, yet you did. Now they will not forget. Rian managed a weak smile. I told you, we don't quit. As the crowd slowly dispersed, whispers already spreading through the station. Selin guided him back toward the bar. The glow in her eyes was no longer amusement, but something deep approval, and perhaps a flicker of hope. For Rian, exhaustion weighed heavy on his body, but inside, a quiet fire burned. He had not only endured the test, he had shown them what it meant to be human. The walk back to the bar was slow. Rian's legs felt like stone, his arms heavy as if he had carried mountains. Sweat still clung to his skin, and each step reminded him of the endless shifts of the chamber. Yet he kept his back straight. He would not let the crowd see how close he had come to collapsing. Selin stayed close at his side, her hand brushing his arm now and then to steady him when he stumbled. Her calm eyes studied him, but there was a warmth in her gaze that had not been there before. When they finally reached the bar, most of the customers had returned, though the room was quieter than earlier. The whispers had grown softer, but the weight of their stares had not gone away. Rian sank onto the stool at the counter, exhaling deeply. Selen placed a glass of clear water in front of him. "Drink this," she said. He obeyed, the cool water, soothing his burning throat. For a while, silence stretched between them. Selen wiped the counter with slow, thoughtful motions, her teal skin catching the light. Rian leaned forward on his elbows, gathering strength again. Finally, he spoke. "You knew this would happen," he said. "You knew someone would challenge me." Selen's eyes met his. "Yes? Then why not warn me?" Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Would you have refused?" Rian gave a small laugh, though his chest still ached. "No, exactly," she said. He set the empty water glass aside and rubbed his temples. "I don't understand. I came here for rest, not to put on a show. Now every alien in this place is watching me like I'm some kind of symbol. Why?" Selen placed the cloth down, her voice quiet but firm. "Because you are, and because I needed to know if you could bear it." Rian straightened slowly. "You tested me on purpose." She nodded. "I did. The glass was only the beginning. The chamber was the next step. I had to see if humanity's stories were true. I had to see if you could endure." Rian frowned. "Endure for what?" Selen's eyes flicked around the room before she leaned closer, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "Because the Droll are returning." The name again. Rian remembered it from their last quiet talk, but the way she said it now sent a chill across his skin. "You've mentioned them before," he said. "Who are they really?" Her expression darkened. "The Droll are not like the mercenaries you faced, or the traitors you see here. They are destroyers. Long ago, they swept across stars like a storm. Entire worlds burned under their fleets. It took a coalition of many races to push them back. And even then it was nearly too late. Most here hope they are only rumors, shadows of the past. But I have seen the signs. They are stirring again." Rian's hands tightened on the counter. "And you think humans can stop them?" "I think humans might be what the galaxy needs," she said. "Your kind is young to the stars. Yes, you lack the great fleets or the ancient weapons of older species. But you have something else. You refuse to quit. You push through pain, fear, and despair when others would surrender. That is what I saw tonight." Her words pressed heavily against Rian's heart. He had never thought of himself as anything special. Back home, he was just another pilot, another wanderer searching for purpose. Yet here, in this strange place, aliens looked at him differently. "Why me?" he asked softly. "Why not wait for some leader, some soldier from Earth?" Selen shook her head. "Because leaders do not come here. They stay in their halls of power. But whispers start here. In places like this bar, traders will carry the story of what happened tonight to other stations, other worlds. A human who drank the Black Star brew and endured the chamber. They will speak of you. And when fear of the Droll grows, those whispers may be enough to spark courage." Rian rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. "I'm just one man. One man can become a symbol," Selen said gently, "and symbols spread faster than ships." The truth of her words sank deep. Rian thought of the mercenaries who had doubted him. Now forced to respect him, he thought of the bar filled with whispers, carrying his name beyond these walls. He thought of Selen, who had planned all this, who had chosen him to drink that glass. "You've been planning this a long time," he said. Her eyes softened. "Since the last time I saw the Droll. I was a scout then. My people fought, but we lost too much. I swore I would not be blind if they rose again. I built this bar as a place to listen, to watch for signs. And when the signs came, I waited for a spark. Tonight, I saw one." Rian sat back, staring at her in silence. Selen's laughter, her teasing smile, her calm grace, all of it had been a mask hiding this deeper purpose. She was not just a barmaid. She was a sentinel, waiting for the right moment to act out at last. Rian shook his head with a weak laugh. "I came here looking for rest, Selen. You've given me anything but." Her lips curved into a smile, but her eyes held no amusement, only determination. "Rest is for later. Right now, the galaxy needs those who will endure." The night stretched on, But the bar did not return to its earlier ease, even as customers returned to their drinks. The whispers kept flowing. Rion's name would not stay within these walls. It was already moving outward, carried by traders, mercenaries, and wanderers. Rion sat quietly, his body aching, his mind spinning. He had not asked for this, yet something inside him stirred. The same stubborn spark that had carried him through the chamber. Maybe Selin was right. Maybe humanity's strength was not in fleets or weapons, but in the will to stand when others fell. Selin placed another glass of water in front of him. Drink. Tomorrow will come quickly. He looked at her, half smiling despite his exhaustion. And what happens tomorrow? Her answer was calm, but it carried weight. Tomorrow. The galaxy begins to listen. Rion lifted the glass and drank. The cool water steadying him. Outside, the station lights flickered against the darkness of space. And somewhere far beyond, unseen by most, the shadow of the drill moved closer. Morning on the station was not like morning on Earth. There was no sunrise, no birdsong, no fresh air drifting in through open windows. Instead, the change came with shifting light panels and the low hum of systems moving into a new cycle. Rion woke to that sound, his body sore, his muscles still stiff from the trial of the chamber. He sat up slowly, rubbing his neck. The small room Selin had given him was simple, with a narrow bed, a metal chair, and a screen showing the outside void. The stars beyond seemed endless, yet silent, as if waiting. Rion splashed water on his face from the basin, then pulled on his plain jacket. He did not feel like a hero, nor a symbol. Just a tired man who had stumbled into something far larger than himself. Still, Selin's words from the night before echoed in his head. Tomorrow. The galaxy begins to listen. When he entered the bar, the place was already alive. Merchants with scales, mercenaries with scarred armor, and wanderers from distant worlds filled the seats. The air buzzed with chatter. Rion felt the shift immediately. Conversations halted for a moment as eyes turned toward him. Then, as if nothing had happened, the talks resumed, but quieter, heavier. Whispers had grown overnight. Selin moved behind the counter, graceful as always. But there was a sharpness to her movements now. She greeted Rion with a nod and slid a plate of food toward him. Eat. She said, "You'll need strength." He sat and picked at the meal, though his appetite was weak. Finally, he asked, "How fast do stories travel here?" Selin's lips curved faintly. "Faster than ships. Traders gossip more than they trade. What you did last night will already be spoken of on nearby outposts." Rion shook his head in disbelief. "Over a glass and a chamber. Not over the glass," Selin said softly. "Over the human who endured. The galaxy is watching for strength. They are afraid, though many will not admit it. Your story gives them something to cling to." As if to prove her words, the reptilian traders approached. Their scaled heads bowed slightly toward Rion. "We heard," one said in a rough voice. "Human fought the chamber and lived. You are welcome among our kin." Rion blinked, unsure how to reply. He simply nodded. The traders seemed satisfied and moved on, whispering to others. Selin leaned closer. "You see, already it spreads." Rion frowned. "And when the drill come, will whispers be enough to stop them?" Her eyes darkened. "No, whispers are the spark, but sparks need fuel." The day passed with more signs of change. A mercenary captain offered Rion a seat at his table, something unheard of the night before. A group of small insectoid travelers clicked their mandibles in greeting when he walked by. Wherever he went, he felt the weight of unseen eyes. He was no longer just another wanderer. He was becoming a figure, whether he wanted it or not. Later, Selin guided him to a private room at the back of the bar. Inside sat a handful of figures, captains, scouts, and traders from different races. The air was tense. They came to listen. Selin whispered. Rion looked at the gathered group, uneasy. "Why me?" A tall, thin alien with silver skin answered first. "Because you are new. Because your kind has not yet been broken by the drill. We need fresh strength." Rion crossed his arms. "I'm not a leader. I don't have fleets or armies. I'm just one man." Selin placed a hand on his shoulder. Sometimes one man is enough to begin. The silver-skinned alien leaned forward. The Droll are moving in the outer sectors. Colonies vanish, caravans burn, and still the great councils do nothing. They fear each other more than the true enemy. We need someone all can rally behind. Perhaps that is a human. Rion's heart pounded. He remembered Selen's words, symbols. Spread faster than ships. He saw now what she meant. These beings did not want a general. They wanted a sign of hope. But he was no hero. He thought of Earth, still young among the stars. Humanity had barely begun to reach outward, yet maybe that was the reason. Humans had not been scarred by past wars with the Droll. They still carried raw stubbornness. A fire unbroken. I don't know if I can be what you need, he admitted. Selen's gaze held steady on him. Just stand, Rion. Others will follow. The meeting stretched long. Maps were spread across the table, glowing with marks of lost colonies. Voices rose, some angry, some afraid. Rion listened more than he spoke, but every time he did, silence followed. His words carried weight, not because of who he was, but because of what he represented. When the meeting ended, Rion stepped out into the dim corridor. His chest felt heavy. The galaxy's burden pressed closer with every passing hour. Selen walked beside him, quiet at first, then she spoke. You doubt yourself, she said. He gave a tired laugh. Wouldn't you? She tilted her head. Yes, but I would still act, and so will you? Rion stopped and looked at her. Why do you trust me so much? Her eyes softened. Because I have seen many races in my time. Most bend when pressed. You did not bend in the chamber. You stood. That is why. Her faith steadied him, if only a little. That night, the bar was quieter. Some customers had left for their journeys. Carrying stories with them, Rion sat at his usual stool, staring into his glass of water. Selen moved about the room, but her gaze often returned to him. At last, she joined him. Do you understand now? She asked. Rion nodded slowly. Yes, the whispers are spreading. But soon whispers won't be enough. The Droll won't care. About stories, Selen's voice was calm, yet sharp. Then we must turn whispers into action. Outside the station, ships came and went, their engines glowing against the void. Among them were traders who carried more than goods. They carried a name, a story, a spark, and far beyond, in the darkness between stars. The Droll stirred, their fleets gathering like storm clouds. Rion lifted his glass, not in a toast, but in thought. He did not know what tomorrow would bring, but he knew one thing. He could no longer walk away. The station was quiet in the early cycle, yet the silence carried a tension that could not be ignored. Rion stood by the viewport, watching the endless stars. He knew beyond those stars, fleets were moving. The Droll no longer lingered at the edges. They were coming closer. Behind him, the bar slowly filled with sound. Merchants spoke in low tones, mercenaries checked their weapons, and travelers leaned close together, sharing rumors. The whispers that had begun with one chamber trial were no longer whispers. They were a rising chorus. Selen entered, her steps steady. Her expression calm, though her eyes carried fire. She joined Rion at the viewport. They are here, she said softly. Rion turned. The Droll? She nodded. Scouts sighted them near the outer ring. A small force, testing, but more will follow. They always test first. Rion's stomach tightened. He had been many things in his life, but never a commander. Yet now creatures from a dozen worlds were looking to him, not for orders, perhaps, but for courage. They'll expect me to act, Rion said quietly. Selen's lips curved faintly. And you will. That is why they follow. The doors opened, and figures from different races entered, captains, scouts, traders, even mercenaries. They filled the back room where the meetings had begun. Rion joined them, and the air grew heavy. A silver-skinned alien spoke first. The Droll scouts will strike within the day, if we let them. They will spread fear. They must be stopped here. Another voice followed, deep and rough. But who leads? We are many ships, many tongues. We need one voice. All eyes turned to Rion. He felt the weight settle on his shoulders, heavier than the chamber, heavier than any burden he had carried before. He wanted to refuse, to say he was just a wanderer. Yet when he opened his mouth, the words that came were different. "Then I'll stand with you," he said. "Not as a ruler, not as a general, but as a man who will not bend if we fight together. We can stop them if we fall alone. We give them everything." A murmur spread through the room. Heads nodded, hands struck tables. Something stronger. Then agreement filled the air. It was resolved that by the time the meeting ended, a plan had formed. Small as it was, the station would not run. The fleet patched together from traders, mercenaries, and wanderers would meet the drill scouts head-on. Rian walked the corridors afterward, his mind racing. He remembered Earth, far away. Still innocent of this war, he thought of the people who lived there, unaware of the dark tide pressing across the stars. If he failed, perhaps one day the drill would reach even that blue planet. That thought gave him strength. When the alarm sounded, the station shook with energy, sirens wailed. Lights flashed red, and voices echoed across the halls. The drill had arrived. Rian stood on the command deck of a borrowed ship, its controls strange under his hands. Round him, Selen and others worked with calm speed. Outside, ships took formation, an unlikely fleet, rough and mismatched, but united through the viewport. Rian saw them, sleek, dark drill vessels sliding into the sector. Like predators, even a small force carried danger, their weapons sharp and their movements precise. The channel opened. Human, a voice hissed, low and mocking. "You are the one they whisper of. The one who lived. You think whispers will stop us?" Rian steadied his breath. "No, but fire will." The signal cut, and the battle began. The void erupted with light as ships fired. The station's guns roared, mercenary craft darted like knives, and trader vessels turned cargo haulers into weapons platforms. The drill moved in cold precision, striking with practiced cruelty. Rian's ship shuddered under fire. He gripped the console, forcing calm into his voice. "Hold the line, stay together." Selen's hands flew across controls, shields failing, but their flank is weak. Strike now. The fleet turned as one, hammering the drill vessels. One enemy ship broke apart, flames spilling into the void. A cheer rose across the channels. But the drill were not broken yet. Their largest ship pressed forward, guns tearing through to allied craft. The void filled with wreckage, and fear clawed at Rian's heart. "Stand firm," he called. "They want us to break. Don't give them that." His words spread through the comms, carrying more than orders. They carried stubbornness, human stubbornness, the kind that refused to bend. The fleet answered. Mercenaries charged, insectoid scouts darted in daring runs. Traders rammed their heavy freighters straight into enemy fire. Together, they became something the drill had not expected. Unity. At the heart of the clash, Rian's ship faced the drill flagship. Selen's eyes locked with his. "One chance," she said. He nodded. Engines flared. Weapons fired, and the ship plunged forward. The collision of fire and steel lit the void. The drill flagship cracked, then burst into flames. Silence followed. For a breathless moment, the battle stilled. Then the remaining drill ships pulled away, retreating into the darkness. The sector was safe, for now. On the command deck, cheers broke out. Selen allowed herself a small smile. "You see, Rian." The whispers became fire. Rian leaned back, exhausted yet alive. "This was just scouts. More will come." "Yes," Selen agreed. "But now the galaxy knows they can be stopped." In the days that followed, word of the battle spread faster than any ship. Stations whispered of the human who stood firm, of the mismatched fleet that fought as one. Traders carried the tale from world to world. Rian sat once more in Selen's bar, the same stool where it all began. The glass before him was plain water, yet it felt different now. The bar was filled with voices, not of fear, but of hope. Selen placed her hand on the counter near his. "You did not ask for this," she said. "No," Rian admitted. "But maybe this is what humans are meant to do, to remind others not to bend." Outside the viewport, stars burned bright. Somewhere in that vastness, the drill prepared for more. War. But now they faced something new, an idea that no fleet could easily destroy. A spark had become a flame, and the flame was only beginning.